This is slavery. I tell it to let the English people know the truth, and I hope they will never leave off to pray God and call loud to the great King of England, till all the poor blacks be given free, and slavery be done up for evermore. After the abolition of the slave trade in 1807, Mary Prince became the first black woman in Britain to produce an autobiography, The History of Mary Prince, a West Indian Slave. In her story, Prince detailed her personal horrors of slavery in the British Atlantic world, and her autobiography became a driving force for the abolition movement against slavery. Prince's story begins in Bermuda, where she was born enslaved, and alongside her mother was purchased by a merchant, Captain Darrell, and given as a gift to his granddaughter, Betsy Williams. In this new household, Mary recalled her treatment being akin to a family pet. As a slave, she was treated well by Betsy and Betsy's mother, but because of her youth, Prince recalled that she was ignorant of what life as a slave would entail. I was too young to understand rightly my condition as a slave, and too thoughtless and full of spirits to look forward to the days of toil and sorrow. At age 12, Mary was sold again, away from her family, and suffered at the hands of brutal owners. First to Captain John Ingram and his wife, and then again to a slaver on Grand Turk Island, where Prince was forced to work in salt ponds in terrible working conditions. Enslaved people who worked in salt ponds often suffered blisters from standing for hours in the ponds, which also caused boils, sores, and often partial or total blindness. Prince was then sold again for a fourth time to John Adams Wood and his wife Margaret, where she continued to suffer extensive physical abuse. Despite her circumstances, Prince demonstrated incredible conviction, resisting the abuses from her third master and even defending his own daughter, whom he also beat. All the while, she persuaded her master to permit her to undertake employment as a salaried worker at a nearby household, though he would receive her wages. Though without financial recompense, Prince developed skills and independence that would serve her with her next master. With the Wood family, she continued salaried work whilst the family were away, earning money by taking in washing, selling provision to ship captains, and buying and selling coffee or hogs. With this money, she tried to buy her freedom, only to face rejection from the Wood family. Mrs. Wood resented Mary for her attempt at freedom, calling her a black devil, increasing her floggings and asking who had put freedom in her head. Nevertheless, Mary forged her own path. She attended a Moravian church and became a converted Christian. This religious networking would be crucial to her time in England. She also met and fell in love with Daniel James, a free black man. Mary noted, "We could not be married in the English church. English marriage is not allowed to a slave, and no free man can marry a slave woman." The Wood family also asserted that Mary had no right to marry as their slave. But Mary was undeterred and married Daniel anyway in a Moravian church in 1826. In 1828, despite Mary's marriage, the Wood family resolved to travel to England to enroll their children in English schools, with Mary alongside. But it was in England where Mary, or Molly, as her slave name was in the Wood family records, found her freedom. After months of suffering at the hands of the Woods and her growing rheumatism, Mary claimed freedom for herself, leaving the Woods' household and calling upon her Moravian connections, reaching out to local missionaries for work and sanctuary. It was here where she met Thomas Pringle, who would influence her involvement in the Anti-Slavery Society and help her make history. That same year, with the help of Pringle and the Anti-Slavery Society, Mary became the first woman to present a petition to Parliament, calling for her emancipation in the West Indies. This petition was unfortunately denied. John Adam Wood continuously refused Prince's pleas for freedom, rendering her unable to return to her husband and family without fear of re-enslavement. In 1829, Mary published her unique experiences in the life narrative, The History of Mary Prince, a West Indian Slave, which was transcribed by Susanna Strickland and first published by Pringle in 1831. In it, she reflects upon the barbarity of English families in the West Indies, saying, "I have often wondered how English people can go out into the West Indies and act in such a beastly manner. But when they go out to the West Indies, they forget God and all feelings of shame, I think, since they can see and do such things." The book had a profound and immediate impact in the abolitionist movement, shining a light on the experiences of Black enslaved people, and specifically Black women. The life of Prince after the publication of her account is unknown. It's unclear whether Prince ever returned to the West Indies to be with her husband. Still, Mary undoubtedly found her freedom in 1833, when slavery was abolished in all British territories. Mary's story, her words of unrelenting power and emotion, opened the eyes of English people to the cruelty of slavery in the West Indies. As a Black woman, both enslaved and free, Mary Prince, now a national hero of Bermuda, defied the odds and the dictates of her circumstances, withstanding terrible abuses, to determine the course of her life and influence the course of history.